When my daughter told me, "Dad, the venue is small, so we're only inviting immediate family," I smiled and said, "Of course, sweetheart." What I didn't tell her was that I had already paid $43,000 for that very venue. I wasn't invited. I didn't even receive an email, a mention, a chair. But I stood in the parking lot that night, watching strangers toast champagne in a hall I paid for, listening to speeches from men who knew nothing about the first time she broke her arm, or the bedtime songs her mother used to hum. You might think I was angry, bitter, ready to lash out. But I wasn't. I paid for the rest of the reception that very night, quietly, anonymously. I mailed her mother's sapphire necklace to the hotel. No name, no note, just a message in silence. 3 weeks later, she found out. Not because I told her, but because the catering company had a glitch in their system and sent the invoice to her husband by accident. That's when things truly began to unravel. If you've ever felt erased by someone you love or wondered what it costs to love someone unconditionally, even when they pretend you don't exist, this story is for you. Before we dive into a tale of absence, betrayal, and quiet redemption, hit subscribe and stick around. Because what this daughter found buried in a wedding gift box will haunt you. And it all started with a letter she never opened. My name is Richard Coleman. I'm 68 years old, retired from 42 years of accounting, and I live alone in a modest house outside Helena, Montana. I mow my own lawn, I eat my dinner by 6, and I still fold my shirts like I'm preparing them for military inspection, though I've never served a day. My wife, Mary, used to laugh at that, said I treated socks with more ceremony than most men treat wedding vows. Mary's been gone 15 years now. Cancer took her slowly, cruelly, the kind of death that turns strong hands into trembling fingers and makes silence louder than any scream. After she passed, the world got quieter. Too quiet. But I still talk to her, mostly when I burn toast or lose the TV remote. It's stupid, I know, but in those moments, I feel her. Or maybe I just miss her enough to pretend. We had one daughter, Emily. She's 32 now, smart, stubborn, the kind of woman who could command a boardroom by 25. When she was born, Mary said she had my eyes and her fire. She was right about both. Raising Emily after Mary died was like building a bridge with one hand. I did my best. I worked long hours, sometimes too long. There were birthday dinners I missed, school plays I never saw, and one prom night I forgot entirely until I came home to find her mascara streaked and her dress wrinkled on the couch. I said I was sorry. I was always sorry. But I paid for college. I bought her first car, a blue Toyota Corolla with a dented fender. I taught her how to drive, how to balance a checkbook, how to check oil with a paper towel and a prayer. I mailed her letters every semester. Stupid little things, clipped articles, dad jokes, once even a $20 bill folded into a heart. She never wrote back, but that was okay. I figured she was busy, or maybe just young. I always thought she loved me. Maybe not the hug you every day kind of love, but the kind where you remember who drove 6 hours to fix your apartment heater when your landlord was unreachable. The kind where you know someone would say yes before you even ask. I was that kind of father. The background noise, the safety net. I didn't realize until much later that Emily didn't want a net. She wanted a presence. She wanted someone in the front row of her school debate, not someone wiring money for a trophy afterward. She wanted warmth, eye contact, dinner at the same table. And I God, help me. I thought paying for everything was enough. It wasn't. I remember one Thanksgiving. She was 17, I think. I was stuck finishing a financial audit, trying to get a report out for a client who couldn't wait till Monday. Emily set the table herself, cooked box stuffing and dry turkey breast. When I finally walked through the door at 9, she didn't yell. She just handed me a plate wrapped in foil and went upstairs. I ate alone in silence, and the only sound was the tick of the microwave clock. That night, I told myself she'd understand someday. That all the nights I missed would stack up into some kind of mountain of meaning. But years passed, and the mountain never came. Only distance, polite phone calls, birthday texts instead of visits, and always the phrase, "I'm just so busy." When she told me she was engaged to a man named Tyler, I was surprised she didn't introduce him sooner. I'd heard his name once or twice, but never met him. "We've just been swamped," she said, "but you'll meet him soon." I asked where they planned to live, how the proposal went, all the questions a father is supposed to ask. She answered, but vaguely. Then she added, almost as an afterthought, "We're keeping things small for the wedding, just immediate family." I smiled. I nodded. I told her that sounded lovely. What I didn't say was how my stomach twisted at the word immediate. How I suddenly felt like a guest in my own bloodline. But I buried that feeling, like I always did. I told myself not to overthink it, not to make it about me. She mentioned they were still finalizing things. Venue, vendors, the usual madness. I offered to help. "Whatever you need," I said. "Just tell me. I want this to be perfect for you." She hesitated, then said they were a bit short on deposits for catering and decor. I wired the money the next morning. It wasn't about control. I wasn't trying to buy my way back in. I just thought, if I couldn't walk her down the aisle, if I wasn't even sure I'd be invited, I could at least make sure the flowers were fresh, the lights were warm, and the food didn't taste like cardboard. That's the thing about fathers like me. We don't always know how to show up the right way. So we pay to show up the best way we know how. But sometimes, silence isn't golden. It's just absence dressed in polite clothing. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. Emily's voice was bright, almost rehearsed. "Dad, I have some news," she said. "Tyler proposed. We're getting married." I was sitting on the porch when she said it, watching a squirrel dig up one of my planters. For a moment, I forgot about the dirt, the squirrel, the ache in my knees. "Married," I said, my voice catching. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Congratulations." She laughed lightly, the way she used to when she was 10 and won spelling bees. "Thanks, Dad." It was a quiet proposal. Just us at the cabin. "You remember that place near Flathead Lake?" Of course I remembered. It was where I took her fishing one summer when she was 7. She hated every minute of it. Cried when the worm wiggled. But I'd rented the place again every few years, just for the memory. I hadn't known she'd gone back as an adult. "I'm so happy for you," I said, meaning it. "When's the big day?" She hesitated. "We're still figuring it out. There's so much to plan. Venues are expensive, and everything's booked months in advance. Honestly, it's overwhelming." That was my cue. "Emily, let me help," I offered. "I mean it. Your mother would have wanted you to have a beautiful wedding. Whatever it takes, I'll cover it." There was silence. A long one. I imagined her pressing the phone to her chest, muting me, thinking, "You don't have to do that," she finally said. "We're trying to keep things simple, small, just immediate family." That word again. I know, I said. Still, let me at least take care of the basics. A good venue, some food people won't complain about. Flowers that don't wilt in the first hour. She chuckled. You're serious? Dead serious. I've been saving up for a fishing boat I probably don't need. Let me spend it on something that actually matters. Another pause. Then, okay. Thank you, Dad. That's really generous. She gave me a list of vendors they were looking at. Caterers, decorators, a photographer who charged more than my first year of college tuition. We haven't made final choices yet, she said. But if you could just help get things rolling, maybe cover deposits. I didn't hesitate. The next morning, I wired $20,000 from my retirement account. I added a little note to the transfer. For Emily and Tyler, wishing you a day you'll never forget. I didn't hear from Tyler, not directly. A few days later, Emily forwarded me an email with a terse thanks from his account. No name, no warmth, just a flat acknowledgement that the money had arrived. Still, I told myself not to read into it. Maybe he was busy. Maybe it was just his way. Not everyone's good with words. A week passed, then 2. Emily sent me occasional updates. Venue chosen, menu ideas, color palettes. All in the abstract. Nothing specific about the date. No mention of travel arrangements or my suit size. No talk of rehearsal dinners or father-daughter dances. I brushed it off. Weddings were chaotic. Emily had always been independent, meticulous. Maybe she was just waiting until everything was locked in before sending formal invites. But then my sister called. You must be so excited, she said. Did you get your invitation yet? I paused. What invitation? To the wedding, Richard. They arrived this week. Didn't you get yours? My mouth went dry. I haven't seen anything. Maybe it's still in the mail. She hesitated. It was digital. Came by email. I thanked her, ended the call, and opened my inbox. Nothing. I checked my spam folder. Promotions. Coupons. A newsletter about prostate health I don't remember signing up for. But nothing from Emily. I tried not to panic. Maybe it was a mistake. A typo in my email address. I texted Emily a simple question. Hey, sweetheart. Just checking? Did I get lost in the invite shuffle? She didn't respond. Not that day, not the next. 2 days later, I received a message. Hey, Dad. Still finalizing things. We'll keep you posted. It was like reading a corporate memo. Sterile, distant. I reread it 5 times, trying to decode what wasn't written. Then I stared at my phone, waiting for a second message that never came. I sat on my porch that night, the Montana wind sharp against my neck. Somewhere inside me, a knot formed, not of anger, but of realization. This wasn't just a delay, this was a decision. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't part of it. But I couldn't let myself believe that. Not yet. Not when I had already paid for the music she danced to, and the food her guests would eat. Not when I still believed this wedding could be our second chance. The air grew colder as the weeks passed, though the calendar insisted it was still early fall. In Montana, autumn comes with a kind of stillness. Trees preparing to let go, animals burrowing deeper, the wind whispering things you'd rather not hear. Emily hadn't mentioned the wedding date, not once. It was like we were orbiting different versions of the same event. Me, counting days and preparing a speech in my head. Her, floating somewhere else entirely. I'd started dropping hints, casual ones. So I was looking at suits online. Navy or charcoal, what do you think? Or, is there a registry I should check out? She always deflected. We're still figuring out the details. Tyler and I are swamped. Nothing's finalized. It wasn't like her. Emily had always been type A, the girl who color-coded homework folders in elementary school. She didn't wing it. She scheduled her life like a military operation. So how could she not know the date of her own wedding? I called her one Tuesday morning. She answered on the third ring. "Hey, Dad," she said, voice clipped. "Just checking in," I said. Wanted to make sure I didn't miss something. "I heard from Aunt Claire that some people got invites." A pause. "Oh, yeah. We're doing staggered emails, trying not to overwhelm the RSVP system." "Got it. So I'll be in the next batch?" Another pause. "We're still reviewing the guest list." Something in her tone deflated me. Like I was a spreadsheet she hadn't gotten around to sorting. I laughed it off, said, "Well, let me know if I need to book a flight. You know me, I still print boarding passes." She gave a weak chuckle. "I will." We hung up. It felt like dialing into someone else's life, one where I was a forgotten password. Then a week later, I ran into Helen. Helen was Mary's old friend. They met in nursing school, lost touch, then reconnected after Emily was born. Helen had driven in from Billings for a medical conference and invited me for coffee. We met at a little bakery off Main. She wore her usual oversized scarf and smelled faintly of lavender and cinnamon. "Richard, you must be excited," she said, taking a sip of her chai. "Excited?" I asked. "For the wedding. Emily told me you're helping organize everything." I helped with some of the deposits." "She said you were reading something at the ceremony? A blessing?" I blinked. "No, I wasn't asked to read anything." Helen frowned. "Oh, that's odd. She made it sound like you were playing a big role." I stirred my coffee until it was cold. "Did she mention when the wedding is?" I asked. "She said next month. You didn't know?" I shook my head. She looked genuinely surprised. "I assumed you'd be front and center." I smiled, thin, brittle. "Me too." When I got home, I opened my email. Nothing. No invite. No RSVP. No mistake. I typed Emily's name into the search bar, just to be sure. The last message was from a week ago. "Still working on finalizing things. Talk soon?" I refreshed my inbox again. Still nothing. I opened my spam folder. A coupon for half-off winter tires. An unsolicited message from something called Wealth Whispers. No Emily. I stared at the empty screen, the way a fisherman stares at a still lake, waiting for a ripple that never comes. Then, for the first time in a long while, I opened a folder labeled Mary Letters. It held every email Mary had ever sent me, back when she was in chemo, and too tired to talk. Little updates, grocery lists, memories. Her last message was a one-line note. "If I'm not there to remind you, show up anyway, even if she pushes you away." That night, I sat at my kitchen table for hours, reading and rereading it. I imagined Mary sitting across from me, stirring her tea, watching me flounder through this mess with our daughter. And somewhere in that silence, I made a quiet decision. If Emily wouldn't bring me to the wedding, I would go anyway. Not to cause a scene, not to demand a chair, just to see her, just to witness her joy, even if from the parking lot. Because maybe showing up wasn't about being seen. Maybe it was just about being there, even when you're not wanted. The morning of the wedding, I woke up at 4:17 a.m. I hadn't planned to go. At least that's what I told myself for weeks. But that morning, something shifted. Maybe it was the dream I had. Mary standing in a doorway, silent, her face calm but urgent. Or maybe it was just the weight of too many questions and too few answers. I stood at my closet for a long time, staring at my suit. Charcoal gray, 2 buttons, the same one I wore to Mary's funeral. I brushed off the shoulders, found a tie that didn't clash, and folded everything neatly into a garment bag. I didn't tell anyone I was going. Not Emily. Not my sister. Not Helen. It was a 6-hour drive to the venue, some vineyard-turned-ballroom in Missoula, according to one of the vendor invoices I'd helped pay. I told myself I just wanted to see the setup, that it would bring closure, that maybe, by some twist of fate, I'd walk in and be handed a corsage and a seat in the front row. It was the kind of lie fathers tell themselves when they need a reason to believe their daughters still need them. The road was quiet, blanketed with a soft fog that didn't lift until after sunrise. I stopped once for gas and coffee, but didn't eat. My stomach was tight with anticipation, the kind that's neither good nor bad, just loud. I arrived at the venue around 1:30 in the afternoon. The ceremony wasn't until 3. Cars lined the gravel drive. White flowers trailed along a wrought iron gate, and soft classical music drifted from hidden speakers. I parked at the edge of the lot and just sat there for a while, watching. Guests arrived in clusters, dresses fluttering, heels clicking, laughter echoing off the vineyard hills. I didn't recognize anyone, not a single face. I stepped out of the car and walked toward the main entrance. I wasn't wearing my suit yet, just slacks and a jacket. I wasn't sure I'd even go inside. At the check-in table, a young man with a clipboard and a Bluetooth earpiece smiled at me. Name? Richard Coleman. He scanned the list, then frowned. I'm sorry, sir. I don't see you on the confirmed guest list. I cleared my throat. Could you double-check? He did, then flipped to another page. Looks like you were listed under pending approval. Then, he stopped. Then gently, you're marked here as removed. Removed. I didn't speak, just nodded once, stepped back, and walked away as calmly as I could. Behind me, the music shifted to something sweeter, more ceremonial, the prelude to a procession. I returned to my car, but didn't get in. Instead, I walked around the side of the building. A row of tall hedges lined the ballroom's outer edge, but through them, I could see glimpses of the setup. White chairs, an arch of sunflowers and ivy, and at the center, her, Emily. She stood under the arch, laughing at something Tyler whispered. She looked radiant. Her dress caught the light in waves. Her hair was pinned like Mary's had been on our wedding day. And yet, not once did her eyes scan the crowd as if searching for someone missing. Not once did her shoulders tense with doubt. She was fully present, without me. I watched as the officiant stepped forward, his voice muffled through distance and glass. Guests leaned in, smiling. Emily reached for Tyler's hands. And there I stood, on the outside of the most important moment of her life. A man who had funded the backdrop, the food, the flowers, and didn't even merit a folding chair. Something inside me didn't break. It just froze. Because that's what grief does sometimes. Not crash, not shatter. It simply stills. I thought of all the nights I'd worked overtime to pay for her school. All the times I chose silence instead of conflict, believing love would be understood even when unspoken. I thought of that little girl with scraped knees and stuffed animals, the one who used to fall asleep on my chest during thunder. And now, here she was, marrying a man who didn't know the difference between Scotch tape and duct tape. in a room full of people who had never once helped her move apartments, who hadn't paid a dime for the champagne they were about to toast with. And me? I was just the guy in the parking lot. The father she no longer needed. The presence she had officially, unmistakably, removed. I sat behind the wheel for a long time, hands gripping the steering wheel, though the car wasn't running. Outside, the sound of the wedding faded beneath the soft thrum of the vineyard breeze. I could hear music, something classical now, probably the recessional. Applause, laughter, the sound of a life beginning. And yet, mine felt like it had just been paused. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even speak. I just stared straight ahead at the dashboard, eyes dry and blank. My first instinct was to drive away. Not just from the venue, but from all of it. The role, the memory, the painful clarity that I wasn't wanted, that I'd been carefully, cleanly cut out of the story like a bad photo crop. I reached for the ignition, then I stopped. My hand trembled slightly as I pulled it back. There are moments in life when silence becomes unbearable, not because it's loud, but because it leaves too much space for the truth to echo. And in that space, I saw her. Not Emily in a white dress, but Emily, age 6, sitting at the kitchen table, gluing macaroni onto cardboard for a Mother's Day card, because she missed Mary too much to make one for Father's Day. I saw her teenage face, red-eyed and defensive, yelling at me once after I missed a school recital. And I saw me, always answering her pain with money, always filling the emotional void with financial deposits. Was this any different? Maybe not. But then again, maybe it didn't matter. Maybe, for once, the gesture wasn't about fixing the past. Maybe it was about giving her a moment that was truly perfect, even if I had no place in it. I pulled out my phone and called the catering coordinator. Her name was Jules, a woman I'd spoken with twice before when paying the initial deposit. "Mr. Coleman?" she answered after 2 rings, her voice upbeat. "Is everything all right?" "I want to pay off the rest," I said quietly. There was a pause. "Excuse me?" "The final balance. Whatever's left. Venue, food, bartenders, flowers, all of it. I want to close it out. Today." She sounded stunned. "That's incredibly generous. You do understand it's around $23,000? "Yes." "And the invoice? Should I update it to reflect full sponsorship under your name?" I shook my head, though she couldn't see it. "No, make it anonymous. Just mark it as paid." She was silent for a moment, then spoke softer. "Understood. Would you like a receipt?" "No, I'll know." After we hung up, I opened the glove compartment. Nestled inside was a small box I'd placed there 2 weeks earlier, just in case. It was Mary's necklace, a sapphire pendant in a silver teardrop setting, the one she wore to every important occasion, anniversaries, interviews, Emily's graduation. She once told me it felt like her armor in pretty form. I'd taken it to a jeweler to replace the chain and polish the clasp. I didn't know if Emily would want it. I didn't even know if she remembered it, but it was the only thing I owned that still felt like it belonged to both of them. I wrapped the box in plain brown paper. No ribbon, no tag. Then I wrote a note on a single sheet of ivory stationery. No name, no signature. Just 5 words. "May your future outshine memory." I drove to the front office of the venue, slipped it into the pile of gifts and deliveries, and walked away before anyone saw me. No announcement, no confrontation. Just a whisper in the middle of a storm of celebration. I returned to my car and sat for a while longer, Guests began to leave, shoes in hand, jackets draped over arms, cake-stained napkins fluttering in the breeze. I didn't recognize anyone, and no one recognized me. As the sun dipped behind the hills, I finally turned the key and drove off, the gravel crunching softly beneath the tires. I didn't know what Emily would think when she found the necklace. Maybe she'd assume it came from an old friend of her mother's. Maybe she'd never open it. Maybe it would sit, unopened, in the bottom of a drawer for years. But I had no control over that. All I knew was this: I had given her something beautiful on her wedding day. Something that didn't demand applause or acknowledgement. Something that wasn't a plea for inclusion. Just a gift. From someone who still believed that love, when given freely, is never wasted, even if it's never seen. Back home that night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slow, hypnotic circles, the way my thoughts kept spinning. Something felt unfinished, like I'd left the story open-ended when it needed a final line. The necklace was Mary's gesture, quiet, elegant, timeless. But mine? Mine needed teeth, not for revenge, not out of bitterness, but because no man should walk beside my daughter without understanding what it costs to make her cry. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table where Mary and I had once eaten pancakes on Sunday mornings and talked about everything and nothing. I poured myself a cup of black coffee, grabbed a pen, and pulled out a new sheet of the same ivory stationery I'd used for the necklace note. This time, I wrote with a different tone, a different voice. Not the voice of a father longing for inclusion, but of a man who'd watched too much to say nothing. The letter read, "To the man who married my daughter, we've never met. You've never shaken my hand. Maybe you never intended to. That's fine. I'm not writing this to make introductions. I'm writing to make something clear. I raised Emily without her mother for most of her life. I fed her, clothed her, sat outside school plays in the car when work ran too late to be inside. I was imperfect, but present, even in my silence. I paid for her school, her first car, the first month of rent, when she called me crying that she couldn't make ends meet. I'm not telling you this because I want thanks. I'm telling you this so you understand what you've married into. If there comes a day when you raise your voice at her, when you forget who she is in the heat of frustration, pause. Remember me. If there comes a night when she cries alone in the bathroom while you sleep soundly, remember me. Because if she ever has to rebuild herself from the damage you cause, you'll owe her, of course, but you'll also owe me, more than you realize, more than you can repay. A father doesn't stop protecting his daughter when she marries. He just becomes quieter about it. So this is me, protecting her, silently. Now you know. I folded the letter carefully, slid it into a plain white envelope, and wrote only 2 words on the outside. For Tyler. I thought long and hard about how to deliver it. Mailing it would feel too formal, too distant. I wanted it to arrive on the same tide as everything else. Subtle, untraceable, part of the fabric of the wedding. So I called Jules again. "Mr. Coleman?" She answered, surprised. "Everything all right?" "I need to send something else," I said. "One more item for the couple. It's personal. A letter. Can you make sure it gets placed with the gifts?" She hesitated, but eventually agreed. "I'll have someone add it to their private pile," she said. "No label? Just the name on the front. He'll know." I mailed the envelope with express delivery. No return address. I imagined Tyler opening it weeks later, Perhaps while unpacking boxes. Maybe when Emily wasn't around. Or maybe he'd never open it at all. But the possibility, the weight of what it might say, would be there, sitting quietly in the back of a drawer or his mind. That was enough. A few days later, I received a text from Emily. No greeting, no explanation. Just this. Did you leave something else? I stared at it for a while before replying, just a few things I thought were overdue. She didn't write back. But later that night, I saw her name flash across my phone screen again. Not in a message, but as the author of a social media post. A wedding photo, newly posted. Emily in her dress, holding a champagne glass, looking back over her shoulder at the camera with that half smile Mary used to give me when she was trying to hide a joke. The caption read, "Built on love, paid with gratitude. Thank you to those who gave without ever asking for credit. We see you now." It was vague, subtle, but I knew. It wasn't an apology, but it was a signal that something had landed. Maybe not the necklace, maybe not the money, but the letter? That she must have read. And Tyler, well, if he had even an ounce of instinct, he'd read it too. Slowly, carefully. Because fathers like me, we don't leave a mark with raised voices or public scenes. We do it with quiet, deliberate words. The kind that hum in the back of your brain when you're about to say something you'll regret. The kind that echo in the silence of a bathroom when someone you love has locked the door and won't come out. That letter wasn't a threat. It was a boundary, a line in invisible ink that only shows up under heat. And marriage, for better or worse, always brings the flame. So now Tyler knew, and so did Emily, that I was still there, not at the ceremony, not in the family photo, but somewhere just behind the hedge, watching, waiting, not to be invited, but to be remembered. For a few days after the wedding, everything was quiet. Too quiet. No thank you call. No message. No mention. It was as if I had never driven 6 hours, never stood behind a hedge, never wired tens of thousands of dollars to strangers with earpieces and floral spreadsheets. Then, on a Thursday evening, my phone buzzed with a notification. Emily had posted a photo. It was one of those polished, perfectly angled wedding shots, sunlight streaming in behind her veil, Tyler lifting her hand like she was a trophy, both of them mid-laugh as if the moment had been untouched by the world. The caption read, "We built everything ourselves. No outside help. Just love, grit, and late nights. Thank you to everyone who supported us, especially those who showed up." I stared at the screen for several minutes, blinking. No outside help? Late nights? Showed up? I set the phone down slowly, like it might explode. It wasn't the lie that hit hardest. It was the erasure, the careful, curated story that replaced reality with something shinier, something easier to explain over brunch with friends. I'd expected to be left out of the photo album. I hadn't expected to be rewritten out of the truth, but I didn't call, didn't text, didn't comment. Instead, I mowed the lawn twice in one day and reorganized the garage until I couldn't feel my knees. 2 days later, the phone rang. "Mr. Coleman?" The voice was bright. Too bright. It belonged to Jules, the catering coordinator. "Yes," I said, bracing myself. "I just wanted to thank you again for settling the invoice so quickly. You saved us a logistical nightmare." "You're welcome," I said. She laughed softly. "Here's the thing. I feel terrible, but I think I may have made an error." My throat tightened. "What kind of error?" "We were doing routine audits, and somehow a copy of the final invoice got CC'd to the groom's email. I didn't realize until it bounced back from our system this morning. I'm so sorry. I sat down. Did it show the payment name? She hesitated. Yes, it listed you as the source, with a timestamp. I closed my eyes. Thank you for letting me know. Again, I truly apologize. It's fine. But it wasn't fine. Not because they found out, but because now they had to face what they'd chosen to forget. I imagined Tyler opening that invoice first, scrolling past numbers he hadn't contributed, seeing my name in black and white, then handing it to Emily, maybe with a shrug, maybe with a smirk. And Emily, what did she do? I pictured her hands going still, fingers pausing mid-scroll. I pictured the heat rising to her face, the thud in her chest, the impossible task of reinterpreting every corner of her wedding through a new lens, the archway she stood under, the music she walked down the aisle to, the glass of champagne she toasted with, the necklace she wore that morning, still unsure where it came from, and now the man behind it all, uninvited, unseen, but undeniably present. That night, she didn't call. The next morning, she still didn't. But by afternoon, she sent a text. 4 words. We need to talk. No punctuation, no emotion. Still, it felt like thunder. I replied, when you're ready. That evening, around 6, I heard the crunch of tires in my gravel driveway. I didn't go outside, just stood in the kitchen and waited. A knock came. One, then another. I opened the door. There she stood. Emily. Not in white, not airbrushed. Just my daughter in jeans and a windbreaker, eyes red but dry. Hi, Dad, she said. Hi, Em. We stood like that for a moment, the way 2 people do when they've forgotten how to begin. Then I stepped aside, and she walked in. We didn't go far, just the living room. She sat on the couch where she used to fall asleep watching cartoons. I stayed in the armchair. The air was dense. She reached into her purse and pulled out the invoice, folded, worn at the corners. She placed it on the coffee table like a peace offering. I didn't know, she said softly. I didn't know you paid for all of it. I said nothing. She looked down. I thought you were done trying. After Mom died. After you stopped showing up to stuff. I never stopped. I said. I just got quieter. Her chin trembled. Why didn't you say anything? Why not tell me? Because it wasn't about making you feel guilty, I said. It was about giving you something good, even if I wasn't in the picture. She picked up the necklace around her neck and touched the sapphire gently. It was yours, she said. No, I replied. It was your mother's. It was always meant for you. Silence. Then she said, barely audible, we lied. I nodded. She looked at me, eyes brimming, and I let Tyler erase you. I let him decide who mattered. I waited. Do you want me to take the post down? She asked. I shook my head. No, that post wasn't about me. It was about who you were pretending to be. But now, you know better. And that's enough. She leaned back into the couch, breath shaky. Do you hate me? She whispered. I took a long time to answer. No, I said. But I needed you to see. That's why I paid. That's why I didn't walk away. A beat. You're still my daughter. Even if I'm not in your storybook ending. 2 days after our conversation, Emily returned. Not to talk, not to confess, but to collect the last of the wedding gifts still boxed in my guest room. I hadn't expected her so soon. She didn't call. She just showed up with a small SUV and a cardboard smile. Mind if I grab the rest? She asked. Of course not, I said. She moved with quiet efficiency, stacking gift bags and wrapped packages, making neat piles by the front door. There was no music, no conversation, just the soft rustle of tissue paper and the occasional clink of ceramic. As she lifted one last box, white with silver trim, I noticed something flutter loose beneath the lid. A slip of folded paper, wedged between gift cards and wine tags. It was aged, cream-colored, a little wrinkled at the corners. Emily paused. "What's that?" I asked gently. She pulled it out slowly, as if unsure whether to treat it like trash or treasure. There was no envelope, no heading, just a letter, handwritten in blue ink. Her eyes narrowed, then widened. This is Mom's handwriting." I stepped closer. She didn't speak again, just lowered herself to the couch and began to read silently. Her lips moved, barely. Her breath caught halfway through the first paragraph. I didn't interrupt. I sat in the chair across from her, watching her change, watching her face shift from confusion to recognition to grief. That kind of grief that doesn't belong to a fresh wound, but to an old one, suddenly ripped open. When she finally looked up, her eyes were soaked. "She wrote this before she died." I nodded. "Mary gave me a few letters, said to hold them until the right time. That one was meant for you. I must have accidentally tucked it into the wrong box when I packed the necklace." Emily looked back down at the letter. She says I'm like her, that I'm fire and steel, and that's good, but dangerous too." Her voice shook. She wrote, "If you ever feel like pushing your father away because he's too quiet, too distant, too different from who you wish he were, pause. Look again. He's not where he used to be, but he's still there, still loving you the only way he knows how." The room was so still, I could hear the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. She ends it with this line: "If you ever lose your father, not because he left, but because you stopped looking, you will have lost a part of yourself too, the part that knows where you came from." Emily pressed the paper to her chest, like it was fragile, like the ink might disappear if she breathed too hard. "She knew," Emily whispered. "She knew I'd do this." I didn't answer. Some truths don't need to be echoed. "She saw it coming," she said, almost to herself. "Even when I was a kid, even when I started pulling away." Her voice broke. "I blamed you for so much, for being absent, for not talking, for missing things. But you were there. You always were." I felt my chest tighten, but still said nothing. Emily leaned forward, letter still in hand, and rested her elbows on her knees. She looked at me, not with shame this time, not with guilt, but with something older, something deeper, understanding. "I thought that wedding was a chance to prove I could build something without needing you," she said. "But I wasn't building. I was erasing." She swallowed hard. "I erased you." I reached across the table and set my hand gently on hers. "You were hurting," I said. "And when people hurt, they lash out at the safest targets." She shook her head. "That doesn't make it right." "No, but it makes it human." She took a long, shaky breath and sat back, holding the letter in both hands like a map she'd only just learned to read. "She wrote this for me," she said again, "but she wrote it for now, for exactly now." I nodded. Mary always had a strange gift for timing. Emily laughed softly, just a puff of breath through her nose, barely there. But it was real. The first sound of life between us in a long time. She stared at the letter for several more minutes, then refolded it carefully, creasing the same lines her mother had made all those years ago. She didn't put it back in the box. She put it in her purse. And then, standing by the door, she turned and asked, "Do you want to come over next Sunday?" I blinked. For what? Dinner? Nothing fancy, just dinner? With me and Tyler? I looked at her face, searching for hesitation. There was none. You sure? I asked. Yes. A beat. He read the letter too. I raised an eyebrow. And? She smiled faintly. Let's just say he understands things differently now. I nodded. Then yes, I'd love to come. She gave a small, relieved nod, turned, and stepped outside. After she left, I sat alone for a while. Not lonely, just still. The silence felt different now. Not like absence, but like a pause between two notes in a song finally being played in full. Mary had known. She had trusted the long game. And now, so did I. 3 days passed after our conversation. I thought Emily might call. I thought she'd send a message. Something simple. Thank you for the letter. I'm still thinking. But my phone stayed silent. The house did too. Then, late on a Sunday afternoon, I heard a car pull into the driveway. A door slammed, footsteps climbed the porch, and a soft knock followed. I stood in the kitchen, motionless. Another knock. Dad? Her voice called, muffled through the wood. It's me. I didn't move. She knocked again, more gently. Can we talk? I turned toward the door, but I didn't walk to it. Because, for the first time in years, I didn't want to open it. It wasn't petty. It wasn't to punish her. It was because I was angry. And I needed her to know that. I needed to feel that fully, for once. From the other side of the door, I heard her exhale. I know I've said a lot. I know the letter hit hard. I didn't want to leave things hanging. I took a breath, stepped closer, but not enough to unlock the handle. I'm here, I said, but I'm not ready. A pause. You're not ready to talk? She asked. No, I replied. I'm not ready to forgive. Silence. It hung between us like a cracked picture frame, tilting further with each second. She didn't answer right away. I could hear the wind pick up behind her, rustling leaves on the porch. When she finally spoke, her voice was smaller. Okay, she said. I understand. No, you don't, I said, more sharply than I meant. But I need you to. I need you to sit with this, with what you did. She didn't reply. I continued, more slowly this time. Emily, I've spent your whole life letting things go, letting you grow without interference, letting myself become invisible so you could feel seen. And somehow, I taught you to believe I didn't matter. That's not... She started. I cut her off. I didn't say it to hurt you. I said it because it's true. And now, you want me to open the door, act like everything's okay, share a meal like it's just another Sunday. My hand rested on the lock. I stared at it, the way I used to stare at check balances and hospital bills, knowing what it would cost to push forward. But this isn't just another Sunday, I said. This is the day I choose not to say it's fine, just because I love you. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, very softly, I thought coming here would show you I meant what I said, that I want to fix this. And maybe it does, I said. But fixing something starts with facing how deeply it's broken. Her voice wavered. How long do you need? I don't know, I answered. But I need you to be okay with that, to not rush the closure. Because I'm not some footnote you can edit back into the narrative after the wedding photos are posted. I heard her exhale again. No tears, just tired understanding. Okay, she said. Then I'll wait. I finally stepped back from the door. "Thank you," I said. "That means more than pretending we're already okay." A few moments later, I heard her footsteps retreat from the porch. The engine turned over. The car backed out. I didn't watch from the window. I just stood in the hallway, breathing, feeling, letting the anger exist without rushing to suffocate it, because that's what love deserves too. Space. Not just to comfort, but to confront. For so long, I'd believed that loving my daughter meant absorbing everything she gave and never pushing back. But what kind of love is that? Real love, I was learning, includes boundaries. It includes saying, "You hurt me," even when the person you love most doesn't mean to. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid that she'd walk away if I showed her my limits. Because this time, I knew she finally saw me. And more importantly, I finally saw myself. 2 weeks later, I received a text from Emily that read simply, "Please watch this when you can." No context, no link. Just that one request. An hour later, I sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and saw her face on the screen. Paused mid-breath, her eyes fixed on something behind the camera. The thumbnail was titled, "What I Should Have Said on My Wedding Day." It had been uploaded just 10 minutes earlier. I pressed play. Emily stood at a small church lectern, a soft light from stained glass windows washing her in muted blues and golds. She wasn't dressed in anything grand, just a pale blue blouse and a simple necklace I recognized immediately. Mary's sapphire. In her arms, she held a baby, my granddaughter. She looked at the guests gathered behind the camera, then down at the folded sheet of paper in her hands. Her voice was steady, but the strain in her throat was audible. "Today is the baptism of my daughter, Claire," she began, and I was going to read something safe, polite, about legacy and family and new beginnings. She paused, glanced at the pews. But that would have been another performance, and honestly, I've done enough pretending. A rustle moved through the room. Quiet discomfort, perhaps curiosity. Emily continued, "I made a mistake, a big one, a painful one, and I didn't make it alone, but I'll speak only for myself." She looked directly into the camera. 2 months ago, I got married. My father wasn't there. Not because he didn't want to be, not because he forgot, but because I didn't invite him. A collective intake of breath was faintly audible. I told myself a story, that he had been absent during my life, so I owed him nothing now. That love had to be loud, and if he was quiet, he must not have cared. Her hands tightened around the paper, but what I forgot is that not all love looks like applause. Sometimes love is showing up when no one sees you, paying for things without asking for thanks, leaving gifts without notes, standing outside the room just to be close. She glanced down, then unfolded a second sheet, the letter from Mary. She read it slowly, word for word, her voice cracking in parts, stopping when it reached, "If you ever lose your father, not because he left, but because you stopped looking, you will have lost a part of yourself too." By the time she reached the final line, her hands were trembling. "I lost that part, but I'm trying to get it back." She looked up again. "Dad, if you're watching this, thank you. For everything. I see you now." The camera panned to the crowd. Most faces were tear-streaked. A few nodded. Then, abruptly, the video ended. I sat back in my chair stunned, not just by her words, but by the depth of their intention. This wasn't a message in private. It was a public reckoning, a broadcast of remorse and redemption. The next morning, The video had over 200,000 views. The comments were overwhelming. This broke me in the best way. I wish I could have told my dad this before he passed. Forgiveness isn't always quiet, and this proves it. It would have been perfect, but life rarely lets apologies go unchallenged. That afternoon, Emily called, not with joy, but with a voice drained and quiet. "Tyler left," she said. My stomach dropped. "What?" "He packed a bag, said I embarrassed him, that I made our family look dysfunctional in front of the world." I clenched my jaw. "Did he say where he was going?" "No, just away." There was a long silence on the line. "I thought he'd understand," she said, "that telling the truth would free us both." "Some people don't want freedom," I said gently. "They want control." Her breath hitched. "I didn't mean to break everything." "You didn't break anything, Emily. You revealed the cracks." "That's not the same." More silence. "I thought I was ready to lose you again," she whispered. "To tell that truth no matter the cost. But I didn't expect to lose him too." I didn't know what to say. So I said the only thing that felt honest. "You chose honesty. That's not a loss. That's a beginning." She sniffed. "It doesn't feel like one." "No," I said. "Beginnings rarely do." Later that week, she brought Claire over, just the two of them. No Tyler, no ring on her hand. She looked exhausted, hollowed out, but present. We sat on the couch, me holding Claire, while Emily sipped tea slowly, silently. "Did I ruin it all?" she asked eventually. "No," I said. "You just stopped pretending it was whole." A tear slid down her cheek. I thought redemption would feel better. "Redemption never feels like victory," I said. "It feels like truth, and truth is heavy." She nodded. Then, for the first time in years, she leaned into me, her head against my shoulder, her daughter asleep in my arms. "I'm not going anywhere this time," she said. "I know," I replied. "This time, neither am I." The envelope arrived 2 weeks before my birthday. It was pale gray, thick stock paper, addressed in Emily's handwriting. No digital invite, no impersonal text. Just a folded card, handwritten. Inside, the message was simple. "Dad, this time, there's no place for you to stand in the back, because I've already reserved your seat, front row. No substitutions, no regrets." I read it twice, then a third time. I didn't cry. I just sat still for a while, the way you do when a wound finally starts closing. Not with fanfare, but with quiet, almost imperceptible healing. The party was set for the following Saturday, in a modest community hall not far from town. Nothing extravagant, just family, a few friends, and a lot of casseroles in foil trays. When I arrived, the first thing I saw was the banner. "Happy 69th, Richard," in bold navy letters. Someone had even drawn a little cartoon version of me with a mustache and a coffee mug. Emily greeted me at the door, holding Claire in one arm, the other already reaching for a hug. "You made it," she said. "You invited me," I replied. She smiled and stepped aside. "Your seat's right there," she said, pointing to a table near the front. It had a small sign, in looping cursive, "Reserved for Grandpa Richard." I don't remember the last time something that simple made me feel that scene. People mingled. Toasts were made. Someone brought an off-key guitar and played a song I didn't recognize. And then, as the afternoon light shifted through the windows, Emily stepped up to the small platform at the center of the room. She cleared her throat. The room quieted. Claire sat on her hip, wide-eyed and content. "I wanted to say something," Emily began. not just as Richard's daughter, but as Claire's mother. She paused. This past year has taught me a lot about presence, about what it means to show up, even when no one claps. About how love isn't always loud. Her voice trembled slightly. My father isn't flashy. He's not the guy with the punchlines or the booming speeches. He's the guy who fixed my sink at midnight, who drove 4 hours to hand me a sweater I forgot, who quietly made sure my wedding happened, even when I didn't give him a seat. The room was still. She shifted Claire in her arms and added, This little girl doesn't just exist because 2 people fell in love. She exists because one man, quiet, steady, and stubbornly loyal, kept showing up, even when I didn't deserve it. She turned to me. Dad, you are the reason she was born into a world where gratitude now lives at the center. And just like that, the air cracked open. I felt it in my chest. A pressure, then release. Not applause, not redemption, just recognition. The thing I had stopped hoping for. After the ceremony, she came to sit beside me. Claire napped in her stroller. Plates of half-eaten cake scattered the table. The room had softened. The noise turned to hum. I have something for you, I said. Emily raised an eyebrow. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Yellowed slightly at the edges. The handwriting on the front said, To Emily, open only when you've made peace with your father. She stared at it. Another one from Mom. I nodded. She gave me 3, I said. 1 for her eulogy, 1 for your wedding, and 1 for this. Emily took the envelope carefully, cradling it like it might break. I want to open it with Claire, she said. So we did. She held her daughter in one arm, the letter in the other. She read aloud, softly, barely above a whisper. If you're reading this, it means the 2 of you have finally stopped talking past each other. Good. It took you long enough. Emily laughed, choked, but real. Emily, you always had my fire, and your father, he always had my patience. I used to think that was a good balance. Now I hope you do too. She paused, inhaled deeply. The world will always give you reasons to be proud, to be loud, to move forward without looking back. But never forget the hand that steadied your first steps. Never forget the silence that held you when the world was too noisy. That silence had a name. It was love, and it belonged to your father. Emily lowered the letter, eyes shining. She really saw you, she whispered. No, I said, voice rough. She saw us. Sometimes, when the house gets too quiet, I sit at the kitchen table and think about the wedding. Not out of anger, not out of sadness, just memory. Memory is a funny thing. It doesn't ask for permission. It just arrives. Like an old friend you're not sure you missed, but can't ignore. It comes with images. The arch of flowers I paid for, but never stood beneath. The lace on Emily's dress I never saw in person. The laughter echoing from a room I was never invited into. For a long time, I thought being left out meant being forgotten. That silence meant insignificance. That if you weren't in the picture, you didn't matter. But I was wrong. Because sometimes, presence doesn't begin with being seen. Sometimes, it begins with being missed. I remember watching Emily through that hedge, her joy, her lightness, her certainty. And I remember thinking, she doesn't need me. And that thought almost broke me. But not quite. Because even in that moment, I knew something she didn't. She didn't need me that day. But one day, she would. Not because I'm special, not because I paid for things, but because love leaves a shape behind, a silhouette that time can't erase. And when the light shifts just right, the shadow shows. That's what happened after the wedding, after the truth leaked out, after the letter from Mary. Emily didn't return to me with a grand gesture. She didn't beg. She didn't throw herself into my arms. She did something far braver. She came back slowly. She stayed. That's what family really is. Not the absence of conflict, but the willingness to stay in the room after it. People like to romanticize forgiveness. They make it sound clean, immediate, poetic. But the truth is far messier. Forgiveness isn't a door you open. It's a hallway you walk down, sometimes alone, sometimes barefoot, sometimes in the dark. And some days, you turn around halfway. But if the person beside you is still walking too, even at their own pace, that's all that matters. Emily and I still have distance between us. Not emotional, but generational. I still get her daughter's name wrong sometimes. I still ask obvious questions. I still hesitate before hugging her goodbye, unsure if the rhythm we once lost has returned. But we talk. We laugh. She sends photos of Claire holding up mashed peas like trophies. She texts me jokes her mother would have rolled her eyes at. She tells me when she's had a bad day. And sometimes, that's enough. We don't talk much about the wedding anymore. There's nothing left to dissect. We let it exist as what it was. A moment built on misunderstanding, pride, and pain. That somehow birthed something honest. And that's the strange magic of hurt. It can become the soil for something better, if you let it. I used to think my story was one of exclusion. Now, I realize it's one of return. And the turning point wasn't a big moment. It wasn't the invoice, the necklace, the confession, or the speech. It was that quiet knock on my door I didn't open right away. That moment, I chose to let her feel the weight of absence. Because love doesn't always say yes. Sometimes it says, not yet. And in that pause, people decide if they're willing to come back. Emily did. And I did too. We met in the middle, somewhere between what was lost and what remains. If you're reading this because you've been left out, because someone you love made you feel invisible, let me tell you something. You are not unseen. Your love, your effort, your quiet sacrifices, they matter, even if they're ignored, even if they're erased. They still shape the people you gave them to. And sometimes, one day, they'll look around and see the outline of your presence, even in the places where your name was once crossed out. So no, I don't think I'm invisible anymore. I think I'm essential, and not because of the money, or the necklace, or the seat at the party, but because when my daughter needed something to come home to, I was still here, still steady, still me. That's what fathers do, and that's what family should be. Not a place where forgiveness is forced, but a place where you're allowed to be hurt and still stay. A place where leaving is easy, but staying through the disappointment and the silence and the work, that's what makes it real. So if I have any wisdom left to give, any final line to end this story with, it's this. Family isn't where you're required to forgive. It's where you choose not to walk away. And that's what remains.